Okay, picture this. You're at a coffee shop, maybe in London, right? You're trying to order breakfast, you want some coffee, maybe a few pastries, and some milk for your tea. But then, wait, should it be little pastries or a few milk? Your mind kind of races through the grammar rules, and the barista's waiting. It's a pretty common linguistic tightrope, isn't it, even after years of practice? So today we're taking a deep dive into English quantifiers. Think of them as like the precise measuring tools in your English language toolkit. Just like a chef needs to know instinctively whether to use a pinch of salt or a whole cup. English speakers need to really master the subtle art of using words like few, little, many, and much. Our mission today is to help you unlock that clarity and confidence in using these really crucial words every day.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating, I think, is just how often these words pop up and subtly shape the meaning, even the tone of our daily conversations. They're not just dry grammar rules. They actually carry a kind of nuanced weight. So our goal for you today is really to move beyond just being grammatically correct and get to the point where you can truly convey the precise intent you mean, you know?
Absolutely. Okay, so let's unpack the backbone of quantity in English then. Quantifiers.
Yeah.
What exactly are they? Well, they're basically words that tell us how much or how many of something we're talking about.
Yeah.
And they always come right before the noun they're modifying and before any adjectives, too.
Exactly. And as you probably already know, the bedrock of mastering these quantifiers really hinges on one crucial distinction, and that's countable versus uncountable nouns. So for example, books are countable. You can literally count them. 1 book, 2 books, 3 books. Pretty straightforward. But things like water or maybe information, they aren't typically countable in the same way. You wouldn't normally say 3 waters or 4 information.
Right, that makes sense.
And the real insight here is why this distinction is so foundational. It really matters. It's because the type of noun, whether it's countable or uncountable, absolutely dictates which quantifiers are, well, grammatically appropriate. And maybe more importantly, it dictates what kind of measurement you're implying. You're not going to count individual grains of rice usually.
No, of course not.
But you might count, say, the number of bowls of rice.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's start then with the words we use for things we can count, those countable nouns. When you're talking about larger quantities, generally in a positive way,
Right.
many is your go-to, right?
Right.
Like there are many fascinating details in this report, or maybe she has many ideas for the project. Now, if it's a smaller quantity, still positive, you'd probably reach for a few, as in, I have a few minutes before my next meeting, or there are a few solutions worth exploring. And then there's several, which offers a useful middle ground. It means like more than just a couple, but not quite many.
A bit vague, but useful.
Yeah, like I've read several articles on this topic, or several colleagues expressed interest.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting for conveying subtle meaning. The difference between a few and just few. It's tiny but significant. If you drop the A, then few suddenly implies scarcity, often with a slightly negative feel.
Ah, okay.
So if you say few people truly grasp the complexity, it suggests a kind of disappointing number. Or there are few opportunities like this left implies a limited amount, maybe even an insufficient quantity. That tiny little article A, or its absence, it completely shifts how the listener perceives the amount.
That's a really powerful distinction, actually. It changes the whole feeling. Now, what about when you're forming questions or negative statements with these countable nouns?
Yeah, good question.
Any becomes incredibly useful here, right?
Absolutely. Any is your workhorse.
So you'd ask, do you have any questions about that last point, or are there any seats left for the concert? And then negatively, something like, I don't have any pencils left for the exam.
Exactly. And just stepping back for a second, you'll find there are some incredibly flexible quantifiers that work almost universally with countable nouns, especially in more informal settings. A lot of is probably the most common one, and it fits pretty much anywhere. She has a lot of friends in the city.
Right, very common.
And its more casual cousin, lots of, is just as useful. We've got lots of homework to get through tonight.
Good examples. And beyond those big ones, we have a few other useful expressions for countable nouns too, like a couple of. It often means exactly 2, but people use it informally to mean just a small number too.
Yeah.
I'll be ready in a couple of minutes, or she picked up a couple of books at the library. And then a number of usually signals a slightly larger quantity, maybe a bit more formal sometimes.
Yes, often in writing.
Like a number of studies support this theory. And obviously, if you mean exactly two, there's always both.
Can't forget both.
Okay, great. So let's switch gears now and talk about those things we generally can't count, like the coffee we were just imagining or the amount of time we have. Uncountable nouns. For positive statements involving larger quantities of these, we typically use much, correct?
Generally, yes, although a lot of is very common here too. But much is the classic one, especially in questions and negatives.
Okay. So you might hear, perhaps more formally, there is much discussion around this issue, or maybe more commonly in a negative, we don't have much time left to submit the proposal.
Exactly. And for smaller positive quantities of uncountable things, you'd use a little.
Right.
So I have little money saved for a rainy day, or if you're cooking, add a little salt to the dough.
Okay.
And just like we saw with few versus a few, the same really crucial nuance applies to little versus a little. It's the same pattern. When you use little without the A, it again implies a shortage or a negative sense of insufficiency.
So less than expected or less than ideal.
Precisely. There is little hope of a quick resolution that paints a pretty bleak picture, doesn't it?
It does.
Or she showed little interest in the new policy. It conveys a definite lack of enthusiasm or engagement. Understanding this distinction, really getting it, is vital for accurate communication. It avoids misunderstandings.
It certainly is. It's about the feeling as much as the quantity. And mirroring the usage with countable nouns, any, is, again, our consistent friend for questions and negative statements when dealing with these uncountable nouns.
Absolutely. Same rule applies.
For example, is there any coffee left in the pot?
Ah.
Or, we don't have any time to waste on trivial matters.
Perfect. And those universal quantifiers we mentioned a lot of and lots of, they're just as indispensable here with uncountables. You can confidently say, we have a lot of work ahead of us, or there's a lot of information to process.
And informally.
Informally, there's lots of food prepared for the party. Works perfectly well.
Okay. And beyond a lot of, are there other useful expressions for uncountable quantities?
Yeah, there are a couple more worth mentioning. A bit of is quite informal, very similar to a little.
Like?
Could you add a bit of cream to my soup? Very natural.
Right.
And then there's a great deal of. This one sounds more formal, definitely. It's similar to much, and you often see it used with abstract nouns. For instance, the research required a great deal of perseverance. Or, he possesses a great deal of knowledge.
Got it. More formal context for that one.
Oh.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Some quantifiers are incredibly versatile. You called them workhorses before.
Yeah.
They're like the Swiss Army knives of your English toolkit, right? They work effectively with both countable and uncountable nouns. How do these general-purpose quantifiers, well, simplify things for us?
Oh, they absolutely do simplify things. They're your safety net in many ways. Take all, for instance. You can say, all of the reports have been reviewed. Reports is countable. And you can also say, all of the data has been analyzed. Data is often treated as uncountable there.
Okay, same word, different noun type.
Exactly. Or think about enough. Do we have enough chairs for the team? Chairs are countable. And she doesn't have enough energy to continue. Energy is uncountable. Works perfectly for both.
Versatile.
Very. Most is another one. Most of the attendees arrived early, uncountable attendees, versus most of the budget was spent on development, uncountable budget.
Okay.
And some is incredibly common for both types. Could I have some water, please? Uncountable. Or, I have some ideas for next week's meeting. Countable ideas.
And we already covered any working for both in questions and negatives.
Exactly. So all, enough, most, some, any, and of course a lot of, and lots of these are your linguistic workhorses. They cover a huge amount of ground.
That's really useful to know. So knowing all this, what are the most common pitfalls, the mistakes that even experienced English learners still sometimes stumble into? And more importantly, how do we neatly sidestep them?
That's a critical question, absolutely. Let's tackle some of these recurring traps, these common errors. Okay, mistake number 1. Misusing many with uncountable nouns. This is a classic. For instance, you wouldn't say, don't give me many advice, because advice is treated as an uncountable concept in English.
Right, a nose on advice.
Exactly. The correct phrasing would be, don't give me much advice, or maybe more naturally, don't give me a lot of advice. It always comes back to that core countable versus uncountable distinction we started with.
Got it. What's another common one?
Another frequent error involves using some in negative sentences where any is needed. You might sometimes hear something like, we don't have some spare parts. It sounds a bit off.
Yeah, it doesn't sound quite right.
When you're expressing a lack or absence in a negative statement like that, any is typically the standard correct choice. We don't have any spare parts.
Okay, any for negatives. Makes
Okay.
sense.
Then there's the occasional confusion with word order. It seems basic, but it happens. Just remember, quantifiers always come before the noun they describe. So saying, I have experienced much, is incorrect. It sounds very unnatural.
Right.
It should always be, I have much experience, or again, more commonly, I have a lot of experience. Keeping that order straight is absolutely key.
Quantifier first, then the noun. Simple rule.
Simple rule, but easy to forget sometimes. And crucially, another point. Resist the urge to pluralize uncountable nouns. We sometimes hear learners say things like informations or furnitures or advices.
Yes, adding an S where it doesn't belong.
Exactly. These are incorrect in standard English. Uncountable nouns generally stay singular. I need more information, not informations. Or we bought new furniture, not furnitures. If you absolutely need to specify a quantity, you have to add a countable unit phrase like 2 pieces of information or a few items of furniture.
But you count the pieces or items, not the uncountable noun itself.
Precisely. And finally, let's just reemphasize that subtle but really paramount distinction between few and little on one hand, and a few and a little on the other.
It seemed to be a really important point.
It is because it affects the meaning so much. So to recap, few for countables and little for uncountables, when used without the A, consistently convey a negative sense, a scarcity, an insufficiency. They imply not enough.
Okay, the negative pair.
Whereas a few and a little with the A carry a positive meaning. They suggest a small amount, yes, but generally a sufficient or acceptable amount.
The positive pair.
Exactly. Mastering this nuance, truly internalizing it, adds such a powerful layer of precision to your communication. It allows you to convey that subtle intent rather than just, a raw number or amount.
That helps avoid a lot of potential misunderstandings, I imagine. Okay, and just when you think you've got it all sorted, you mentioned this earlier, but it's worth circling back to add another layer of, well, fascinating complexity. Some nouns can actually be both countable and uncountable, depending entirely on the context. I find these especially tricky sometimes.
They are tricky, but also quite interesting. Take coffee, the example you started with. When you're talking about the beverage in general, as a substance, it's uncountable. I drink a lot of coffee to stay awake.
Right, the substance itself.
But when you're ordering in that coffee shop, you're usually talking about individual servings, individual cups, so it becomes countable. I ordered 2 coffees, please.
One substance, 2 ways to count it, depending on context.
Exactly. And it's the same with time. As a general abstract concept, it's uncountable. I don't have much time to waste.
Time in general.
But when you refer to specific instances or occasions, it suddenly becomes countable. I've been there many times. You're counting the occasions.
Okay, that makes sense. What about experience?
Same deal. Experience can be uncountable when it refers to general knowledge or skill gained over time. She has a great deal of experience in negotiations. You can't count that general skill easily.
Right, the overall competence.
But it becomes countable when you're talking about specific events or things that happened to someone. She had many interesting experiences during her travels. You're counting the individual events.
Oh, okay. So the crucial question then is, how do you know which form to use? When is it countable? When is it uncountable?
Well, it all comes down to the context. You have to ask yourself, what am I actually trying to communicate here? Am I referring to a general undifferentiated mass or concept? If so, treat it as uncountable. Or am I referring to specific individual units or instances that I could conceptually count? If so, treat it as countable. That distinction in your meaning is your guiding light.
Context is king, as they say. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. To truly master English quantifiers, the main takeaway is, remember the noun type. Is it countable or uncountable? That's your primary guide.
Absolutely fundamental.
Use any for questions and negatives, generally. Use some for positive statements, generally. Don't forget that a lot of and lots of are your super versatile allies. They work with practically all noun types, which is handy.
Very handy fallback, yes.
And maybe most importantly for nuance, really internalize that subtle but significant difference in meaning between few and little, the negative ones, and a few and a little, the positive ones.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That positive-negative distinction is key for conveying attitude. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Mastering these seemingly small words quantifiers, it really unlocks a powerful level of precision in how you express yourself. It allows you to move beyond just being sort of grammatically correct on the surface to being truly understood with the subtle shades of meaning, the intent that you actually mean. It helps prevent those little misinterpretations that can sometimes happen.
That's a great way to put it. Precision and avoiding misinterpretation. So maybe a good piece of homework for everyone listening. Actively listen for quantifiers in conversations you hear or when you're reading or watching something. Try to notice if the noun being used is countable or uncountable. And the next time you find yourself, perhaps at that coffee shop, maybe even in London, ordering your breakfast. Now, pause for just a second. Consider, are you asking for a little milk, uncountable, or a few pastries? Countable, you'll be well on your way to really wielding these essential measuring tools of English with confidence and real clarity.